So I decided to make a project called the Monday Morning Blank Makers Pen Project. And I reached out to a couple of my buddies that make blanks that I really like. And I said, what do you think about this idea? And they said, great idea. And I will feature a new blank maker every Monday. And those pens can be purchased as soon as you see the blank and you like it and you want it. You can contact me and say, I want that pen. Usually the pen is going to be a cap barrel, one of my custom clips, and a hooligan nib, either a 6 or 8. That being said, I would feel remiss if I didn't give you kind of an overview of blanks and how they've evolved unto this point where we have so many blank makers today. All right, so stay tuned. Okay, I'm not going to try to make this an incredibly long video, but I do have a couple things to get through. So back in the early days of pen making, this was the norm, celluloid. And celluloid is one of the earliest forms of plastic. And this is Tebaldi celluloid. It's no longer made, so it's a very rare piece. And celluloid was made with nitrocellulose and wood pulp fibers or paper fibers or whatever natural pulp fibers that they could use. And it was colored and made in sheets, and it took a long time to cure, and it's very volatile. In fact, they used to make old-time videos out of it. And since then, over the years, they have melted into mush because it's not a material that's going to last forever. Eventually, it's going to break down because it is natural fibers. The other material was casein, and casein is made with milk casein. And they would also do the same type thing. They would mix some hardening agents, like I think maybe lye, I'm not even sure. And they would mix all the different type of coloring agents, and it would be a really cool way. But the problem with casein, unless you fortify it with, I think, formaldehyde, it'll dissolve if it's submerged in liquid for too long. This one here is Tiffany casein, and this is what is done when it's made with the formaldehyde. It's called galalith, which means milkstone in French, because the French made a lot of this. And a lot of this stuff was also used for costume jewelry back in the Victorian age, I think. And it was one of the first commercially made plastics as well. All right, so fast forward, and as nitrocellulose became more expensive and difficult to make, Kodak actually came up with the idea to make what they call safety film, and that was using some type of acid. And that when that came along, all the nitrocellulose film went away, and the acetate film started to come into play. And it also worked well with plastics as well. And Sebloplast, which was made by a company in Italy called Mazzucchelli, did I say that right, John Tello? They made quite a lot of popular pen blanks back in the day. They no longer make pen blanks. They make mostly things for glasses frames and stuff like that. But a lot of their pen blanks were beautiful, and they are quite difficult to work with, actually, too, because they have a very low melting point. But it is beautiful stuff. Last but not least, I want to talk about two other industry standards along with these other industry standards that we previously spoke about. Acrylic. Acrylic was probably something that DuPont came up with accidentally back in the 1940s or 30s for the military or something like that. But it is a very stable material, and this is a vintage piece of Conway Stewart blue lapis. And it has been a great material for making pens. It's durable, it's easy to work, it's stable, it's not going to blow up on you, and it doesn't have a low melting point to melt on you while you're trying to bore it. The last one is ebonite. Now, this is a piece of SCM ebonite, there's a couple of companies that still make it. Germany has a few companies. There's a company in India that makes it, and also Japan has a company that makes it. And ebonite is absolutely a beautiful material. It's actually rubber, what they make bowling balls out of. And it's one of the materials that some people don't like working with it because it smells like burnt rubber when you work with it. But it doesn't bother me, and I can get it to shine up really nice, and it's a beautiful material, but it can be expensive. As with all these vintage materials, they can be expensive, which leads us to our point about blank making. So how did blank making get started? Well, we owe a lot to the kit pen industry. We really do. We don't think that we do, but we do. Back in the day, kit pens were common for a lot of makers that started out. We all started. I made them. Many of my friends made them, and some of them still make them. They're fun to make, and they're cool. So a lot of guys got the idea, hey, I want to kind of make my own blanks to give my own touch or my own look to these kit pens, because basically kit pens are parts of a pen that you wouldn't usually normally make because you didn't have the ability. And so to make that your own, you would create these blanks using resin and maybe pieces of like wood, like in this one. This one's a Tim Kipps blank that I've had for a number of years. But it was a way to kind of give your own look. And it started out like this, where they would use resin and parts of burl wood. And it really was kind of cool. And a lot of my early pens were made like this. But this was a way to kind of create unique and interesting looks on pen parts that were pre-made. Fast forward, people started coming up with all kinds of ways to make blanks and using the resins and the different colors to make creative blanks. Now, they were making solid blanks too, but you'd see a lot of stuff like this, where you would see cactus or, pine cones and things like that. And they were kind of cool. This is a well-known guy who even makes his own cactus juice. And he made these out of, I think, cholla cactus, or not cholla cactus. I forget which kind of cactus it is, but they're kind of cool. And I've had these for a very long time. And then this was from a blank maker that I used to buy a lot of my blanks from years ago, named Wayne Ryan. I don't think he makes blanks anymore, but he was a good blank maker, and he should have continued because I think he was one of the better ones I'd ever seen. So when I got into the custom pen market, I wanted to make some crazy stuff as well. And I got together with my friend Jason Olson and even Wayne Ryan when he was still making blanks. And I came up with the idea of the Musk Ox blank. And Jason and I were the first ones to make this blank. And I still have quite a few of these, and they look pretty cool when you get them done. They can be a little difficult to work with, but they are a lot of fun. And muskox is commonly used in the knife industry for handles and such as, daggers and things. And it gives a custom touch to knife maker handles. But it also looks pretty good on pens. So let me also talk about natural materials as well that some people use. I use just about every natural material you could think of, and I have used it. Of course, wood. Wood is a very popular material in pens. You don't see it as much as you should, but there are makers like Casey Giddens and Scott Lewis from TriStar, and the great Ryan Kruzak, who makes predominantly wood pens, and they're beautiful. And I think that that's another thing that got people started, is to combine the wood and resin, because it looked cool when you can combine the natural look of wood with the beautiful color of resin. And then someone got the bright idea, and I think a lot of our things were stolen from the knife people. Because sometimes I think it kind of crosses over, but mammoth tooth. I won't edit that out. Mammoth Tooth is another good one, and I've made many Mammoth Tooth pens, and I really love working with this stuff. It could be finicky and very difficult to work with, but once you get the technique down, it's pretty easy. And here's another piece of musk ox in its solid form without being sunk in resin. Also, mammoth tusk. Now, I don't suggest using elephant ivory or other ivories, but mammoths were not ever poached. Maybe they were, but I wasn't around then. But I can tell you that this piece, no mammoth was harmed in the making of this piece. It was foraged and probably found, sunk in the ground for many thousands of years. But you could see where we also have put resin here to fill in some of the checks. And this really makes a good material, and it's beautiful when it's shined up. Last but not least is coral. Now, I haven't worked a lot with coral, but you can use it. It's particularly brittle, but it's still nice looking material. And I've seen a couple of people use pens with it. So fast forward to today, and we have a lot of crazy materials that people are making and using, and it just runs the gamut of things that you can buy. You can still get commercially made ebonite, and you can still get commercially made plastics. The other stuff is difficult. One of the other things that people have started using is the medical grade plastics, Ultem. Ultem? I think I said that right. This is blue Ultem, which is a little bit more rare than the amber Ultem, but it's a popular material that people have started to use. But also, we have gotten into some really crazy blank makers. And that's what we're really here for this project. But not just in blanks made of, acrylic. We also have handmade ebonite blanks. And this blank is made by Anton, and he makes these in Asia. And he's quite popular. And then you have Juma, which I'm not really super familiar with Juma, but a lot of people use it, and it's pretty popular. It's got like a snaky pattern on it, and it's kind of cool, and it's one of the newer products. It's been around maybe 5-10 years. Another one that's come out in the last couple of years is the opal material. And these are all made by people just decided, you know what, I want to make cool stuff and I want to see what I can do and push the envelope. Also, there's some blank makers that are using some interesting techniques. This is a Robert Sanchez blank. And this one, he uses pieces of glitter that are floating in his resin, and he mixes it with solid resins to give it kind of a two-tier system. Now, the thing with these, though, and I've noticed, is if you're in the market and you're a consumer for stuff like that, it's very difficult because I don't think Robert sells these commercially. He let me borrow this for this video, and because he uses them on his own pens. But you're right now in the blank making world, there is some scuttle about, people using other people's ideas. So I urge people to do their homework, and I urge people to get educated on, things like this, because originality is very important. So the last thing I want to show you is the last two blanks before we get on to the show. And so everyone will know where I'm coming from with this series, because I'm going to be using all of these blanks, and I'm going to be critiquing what I think about them, what I like about blank makers, what I don't like about certain blank makers. I'm going to never be overly critical, because obviously I've used all of these and I've had great success with them, but I can't, not have an issue with something. Or maybe I can. Who knows? I can think that this is a perfect blank, but there's going to be difficulties and challenges with a lot of different blanks, like this carbon fiber that's infused with copper. This one I have imported from Latvia, and then also a company that's also putting, pieces of copper, in there. This is made by Atlas Materials, and this is kind of cool. It's got kind of the same idea as this carbon fiber one. But we're going to use all of these blanks. All of these blanks in my Monday Morning Makers series, Blank Makers series. So that was just a quick overview of blanks and the blanks that I have, and I have many more. It's not being bragging, but it's just, I'm glad that I have all these things because I can help to educate people on what I've done. I've got over 15 years experience with making pens, or just about 15 years experience. I've been making them for a very long time. Like I said, I started off making kits for about 6 to 8 months, and then I started making custom pens right after that. And one of the things that I've found is that using the best materials that you can find is the best way to make unique and interesting pens. I tend to like traditional shapes with unique materials, and also originality is very important to me. All right, let's get on with the show. So the first blank maker we are going to focus on, and the first one ever, is going to be, I know her as Elise, but her last name is Longazelle. I'm sorry. She is the better half of Jim Hines of Jim Hines Pens, and she makes a lot of their blanks. And a couple of rules here. One, when I'm going to be doing this series, I'm going to be reaching out to blank makers that I think have unique blanks. I'm not going to be reaching out to people that I think need, to do a better job making blanks. I'm not going to be reaching out to people that I think that are doing work that other people are doing. I'm looking for original blanks, and if you reach out to me, I probably am not going to answer. I'm going to reach out to you. And if I reach out to you and I ask you for a blank, or I ask you, hey, let me buy a couple of your blanks, what do you think is yours? I'm usually going to say, what is the blank that you really like to make, and which one do you think looks the best? So that's basically what I did. I did it last night with a blank maker. He's sending me on some blanks. And I actually bought this blank at the Atlanta Pen Show last year. Not this one that just passed, but last year, because I saw it and I really liked it. And I always wanted to make it. So when I started this project, I decided that I was going to use this one first, and I think it was a smart idea. So what do I like about this blank? Well, if you know my work, a lot of my work has been revolved around monochromatic blanks, or maybe two-color swirl. And I've always done that because I like metal work. I like people to focus on the metal work a lot. And if you have a blank that's crazy with a ton of different colors and a ton of different things going on with it, it can get lost in the metalwork, or vice versa, the metalwork can get lost in it. So when I started making my waterfall clips, I decided I was going to start making and using making pens and using blanks that had a little bit more color and stuff like that. So this is one where it's two color, but it really, it's a striking blank. It's got like a crystallized, clear, snowy white and this blank is called Raspberry Cheesecake by Starry Night Resins. I'm sorry, I should have mentioned that first, that this is a Starry Night Resins blank. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit more about her in the next segment. So when I was using this, I found it pretty easy to use. It's a very easy pen blank to turn, and it was super easy to thread. Now, I do need to make a disclaimer. I do not use taps and dies. I thread completely on my lathe. Every thread on this pen has been done on my lathe. So with that being said, I'm not sure how taps and dies would work on this, but as for me, the lathe really cut clean threads in this. And I suppose that that would be the same using taps and dies. The other thing is I wouldn't exactly call this a beginner's blank. And the reason is because of the monochromatic look, you're going to have a stripe here of this raspberry color. And therein lies the issue. If you are unknowledgeable or you don't know how to line those colors up, and I use a 4-start thread, so this is only going to come and line up on one of the specific thread starts. On the other ones, it's not going to line up. So you do your best, and you do your best to try to find. Well, if you don't have the ability to do that, then you're never going to line this up. But since I do, I found this quite striking when I was able to line it up. So I would call this more of an intermediate blank. I like a lot of things about it. Like I said, it was easy to turn, it was easy to thread, it was easy to bore, and it was easy to finish. It sanded well, it shaped well. When I used my lathe tools on my wood lathe to shape it, because I shape everything by hand, I found it, pretty easy to shape. And when it came to sanding and polishing, it wasn't overly soft and it wasn't too hard for me to sand and polish, and it didn't take forever, and I didn't find any open fissures or anything like that, which is another common problem with blanks. So like I said, with every pen blank that I'm using and every one that I do feature, I'm going to have to critique something. My only problem with this blank, and I wish it was a little bit longer. Now, she can come back and say, and which she probably said, Tim, you make really big pens. Your pens are longer than Jim's, and I usually make my blanks for him or other people. And this particular pen is over 6 inches long, just right here. Plus, you add another 5/8 for the threaded end here. And of course, you're not going to use all parts of the blank, because at the end, sometimes there's some mesh or some, smudgy parts of the blank that you don't want to use. But also I needed to make a section out of this, and I was just about able to get a section out of it with the entire material, but I wish I had more to mess with, and in case I messed something up. And that's my only criticism of her blank. Now, this is just this blank, and this is not a representation of all of her work. So I will be using more of her blanks in the future, and I will be talking about them. But in the end, the question would be, Tim, would you buy this blank again? And I would buy this blank again. And that's